will, grab your Bibles, your iPad, your device, and go with me to 1 Samuel chapter 25. 1 Samuel 25. The date is April the 27th, 1777, and the place is Ridgefield, Connecticut. And it's 2 years into the American Revolutionary War, and one of George Washington's favorite and most reliable generals was outmanned, he was outnumbered, he was outgunned by one of the oncoming British forces. And he ordered his men to retreat, and they did, but one stayed there on the hill. It's one of the bravest things that anybody had really ever seen. The commanding officer remained at the battle line. He was single-handedly fighting off the British, so his men would have precious seconds that they needed to retreat as the orders were given. And in the process, this general's horse got shot out from under him. It left him pinned underneath the horse, and even at that, he even from that position managed to fight off the British soldiers. They were at arm's length and allowed him to escape, but just one of the many heroic feats that we read about and we know, right, that men under this general's command knew about. His name was Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold, he was one of America's youngest generals at the time. Arguably the most capable military mind at that time. But Benedict had a fragile ego. And the Continental Congress, right, for some reason that we still don't even know, overlooked him for promotion time and time again. And almost all of his contemporaries, men that were skilled and had accomplishments, but were vastly inferior to the skills of Benedict, kept getting passed over. They would go above and outrank Benedict time and time again. The Congress even refused to raise his salary as the war went on and went through. And fast forward to October 1777. And the place is Saratoga, New York, and Benedict Arnold's under the command of another general, Horatio Gates. And General Gates, man whose skill wouldn't have held a candle to Benedict Arnold, was in charge. And Benedict Arnold gave him counsel to a particular battle that they were fighting. But the battle, he didn't take General Arnold's counsel, and the war went sideways, right? And they started to get overrun, and Benedict Arnold, General Arnold, went out on his own, and he went out to the front lines of this brigade, right? And he gave them the order, and that order would go on, and they would lead them to victory over the British army in that battle. However, General Gates would sit back, and he would take credit for that victory, never even mentioning Arnold. And once again, the Continental Congress gave no recognition or reward to General Arnold. And fast forward to 1779, and here we are again, and Benedict Arnold's now in Philadelphia. And his wife Peggy, who was a loyalist to the Tories, right, the opposition, has been passing British articles about the war. And Arnold realizes that the British officers speak better about him than even his own government does. Peggy arranges a meeting between Arnold and a British officer named John Andre. And just like that, an American patriot war hero became a national symbol of cowardice and greed. A man whose name is now anonymous with traitor. How tragic it is to spend a lifetime in service, right? Serving one allegiance, only to become a traitor in the end. Today in 1 Samuel 25, you're going to see David come this close to doing just that. Right? To sell out the values that he had been championed up to this point. Think of 1 Samuel 25 as kind of a part 2 to 1 Samuel of what we looked at last week in 1 Samuel 24. We left off in chapter 24 with David as a hero, Right? David's a hero, bravely defying the men who were urging him to what? To go and kill Saul when he had the opportunity to. And in that moment, David was the one, right, who boldly urged them to trust God. Trust God and to wait on Him and do things His way. It's in this chapter, David's the one whose faith falters. Maybe like many of us. The one whose flesh gets the best of them. Right? And somebody has to come to his rescue. Oftentimes that we'll go out on our own, and time again, somebody's had to come to your rescue. Right? And then while on one level it's understandable, right, it's got to keep us wondering, even at this late in the book of 1 Samuel, that is David really the king that we've been waiting for? And with that, we'll turn to verse 1 of chapter 25 in 1 Samuel. It says this, that now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, the great prophet Samuel who had ordained David, and they buried him in his house of Ramah. And then David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. This is important, right? Because Samuel had always kind of functioned as a type of father figure to David, spiritual mentor, the one who had anointed David when nobody else did, right? So now Samuel's died, he's dead, right? And David's shaken a little bit. Verse 2 says, there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Right? Simply owning land in that day would have made you wealthy. Right? Just to have any land whatsoever, but to have 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats to go with it, man, it's going to make you in the upper like 0.01% of people. Right? It'd be like saying today that someone had a fleet of like Lamborghinis or a couple of vacation homes, right? Maybe in Turks and Caicos, right? But this was the upper echelon, right? And now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful, but the man was harsh and badly behaved. He was a Calebite. How many of you ladies feel like that describes your marriage right now? Huh? So let me summarize these next few verses, though, for us. David and his men, they've been staying in the vicinity, right, of Nabal and his pastures. And a number of times, David and his men actually protected Nabal, right, and the herds that he had, his property, right, from the Philistines who were still active, and they would come in and they would raid people's land, and they would kill their flocks, right? And David and his men are protecting them. Right? In verse 16 says that David had been like a shield wall for Nabal. In those days, it was customary, like once a year, at the time of the sheep shearing, that which we know is happening based off the scripture we just read, to give a thank you gift, right? To the ones that people who may have assisted you throughout the season and throughout the year. So David sent some of his young men up, right, to Nabal to ask for it. Right? It was basically, this wouldn't have been a surprise to Nabal. It was for the most part customary that he would do that. However, Nabal rejected the men. Right? And to make matters worse, he sent them away with this stinging insult in verse 10. And Nabal answered David's servants. Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Who is David? Right? He knows who David is. Right? He not only does he show no gratitude, but he actually takes a sidebar, a little shot at David, right? And hey, David's just another runaway slave. Imagine you're a waiter at a really nice restaurant. Some large party comes in and they rent a private room, and you and a couple of others have this table, and you're waiting on them, right? I mean, hand and foot, and they're there for like 5 hours, right? After midnight, and you're late, the place is closed, right? You and your team, you give excellent service, right? You are killing it, right? Busting your hump to make sure they're taken care of, and the bill comes, and it's several $1,000 and the guy disputes several items, right? He leaves no tip, and you're like, sir, I think you forgot to fill out the tip portion. And he says, quit begging me for money. Right? The only reason you're a waiter is probably because you flunked out of school and you can't handle a real job. Get out of my face. It's kind of the premise here that's happening with Nabal. Right here. And I'm guessing if that's you, you're going to be angry. You're going to be upset. It's going to hurt your feelings maybe a little bit. And that's basically what happened, right, to David, but on a much larger scale. And with him and all of his men. This is over a year's salary. It's not just one night's salary, right? This is legitimate. Then on top of that, on top of not getting paid, right, he gives you an insult. I think kind of hit David the wrong way. Right? David's grown up as the runt. I mean, crying out loud, right? That's not a wound that you may recover from easily. And David's whole life he's felt overlooked, and then Saul publicly smears him, right, in this campaign as Saul's reign's coming to an end, right? And this insult, just like all of us, can play into our insecurities. And in verse 13 we see, and David said to his men, every man strap on his sword. And every man of them strapped on his sword. David also strapped on his sword. And about 400 men went up after David, while 200 remained with the baggage. Right? He's saying, hey, it's go time. In verse 21, now David had said, surely in vain have I guarded all this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him. And he has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David and more also, if by morning I leave so much as one male of all who belong to him. David's going out for vengeance against this Nabal guy. He's going after him, right? Listen, where's the guy that we saw in chapter 24 last week said that I'll not take vengeance into my own hands. I'll let God handle these things. Where's that dude? Right? Where's he at? Right? Last week, David resisted killing Saul on a number of occasions, right? Who was actively seeking to kill David. He was sitting there right in front of him in a vulnerable state, right? And this week, he's about to murder a bunch of innocent people. Right? Where's that guy? Right? He passed the big test. Right? He passed the big test, not killing the king of Israel when he had a chance, but he's about to fail the little one. Does it ever happen to you? Right? You resist a big temptation only to fall for a much smaller one. David's tired. He's worn out. This dude's playing on his insecurities. And David loses it. Right? Nabal, he has a wife. Her name's Abigail. Right? And remember in verse 3, it said that she was discerning and beautiful. And she hears about what's going on. And in verse 18, it says, then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 skins of wine and 5 sheep already prepared and 5 seahs of parched grain and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs and laid them on donkeys. Right? So, man, here's Abigail. She's pulling together a gift basket full of fruit and meat kebabs and fig Newtons and a Starbucks gift card and a pair of AirPods. And she's going out to meet David. Right? She's going out and she says in verse 24, she fell at his feet and said, on me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant. Let not my Lord regard this worthless fellow, Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. In Hebrew, Nabal, name means fool, which means either it originated from maybe another language or it was a nickname that his buddies gave him, but I'm having a hard time seeing any parent knowingly name their kid fool. Officially, right? Under your breath, I know I get it, all right? Man, I've heard some crazy names. Right? I've heard some crazy name stories. I heard one lady delivered a set of twins. One came out just before midnight, the other came right after midnight, and the mother named them Today and Tamara. Heard about a guy in Texas. Last name was Hogg. Twin girls. Name one Amma and the other Ura. I'm a hog, you're a hog. Right? But it's neither, maybe it's another language. Maybe it's a nickname, right? But Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. Right? Ladies, this isn't exactly a model for how you should talk about your husband. Right? Listen, this is her husband. Right? There's a band of soldiers coming to kill all the males in your house. Right? You do what you got to do. And I think that's what we see Abigail doing. And she continues, but I, your servant, did not see the young men of my Lord whom you sent. I love this. David, this wouldn't have happened if I had been involved. Next time you come, ask to speak to the lady of the house. All right, now listen to what she says next in verse 29. It says, David, if men rise up to pursue you and to seek your life, the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living in the care of the Lord your God. And the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the hollow of a sling. What's she doing? Right? What's she doing? She's reminding David of the promise of God. Right? Who he is in the Lord and what God had promised to do through him. She's reminding him of that. Right? Did you see how she brought up the word sling twice in her argument? Right? What's she trying to do? She's trying to very subtly, right, and very artfully remind David. Hey, David, remember how God took care of Goliath for you? God fights your battles, David. Don't you remember that? Right? Don't you remember? You don't have to take matters into your own hands, David. In verse 30, and when the Lord had done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you prince over Israel, my Lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause, or for my Lord working salvation himself. And when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, then remember your servant. One day she says, hey, when you come to the throne, you're going to have to tell the story of how you got here, David. Right? And on that day, David, when you're telling your grandkids, right, and your grandkids of the story of how God put you on the throne, David, right, how do you want that to look? Do you want to have to mention a chapter like this? Right? You got insulted by nobody and you killed a bunch of innocent people? Is that how you want to be remembered? By the way, I believe that's actually great counsel. One day your life's going to be told to the next generation. Are you living in a way that you're going to be proud of then of how it's told? Parents, you think about that. Right? Because keep in mind, it ain't like us. You come to church and we see the perfect family, right? It's not like that, right? Because they're at home. They're at home, right? They see the real you. They see the real mom and dad. They hear the real words. They see the real relationship. They see all those things, right? And so when we tell them how to live and what to do and how to do it, if that doesn't marry up to what they see and what they feel and what they hear, do you think it's going to resonate? Do you think it's going to matter as much? Right, listen, understand this. Faith means living today in a way that one day you'll be glad you did. Faith means living today in a way that one day you'll be glad you did. Shannon and I are entering into the season of life to where our kids are 20 and 22. Right? So we're at the point now to where we're handing them off. And I got to be honest with you, I've struggled with that. I've struggled mightily with that. Right? Because, man, Dad wants to do everything. Dad wants to fix everything. Dad wants to direct everything. Right? And God had a real moment with me not too long ago. Right? And it was like I was in a time where I was studying, and it just hit me, and He just started to really convict me. Right? As if to say there's coming a time, Chris, to where, listen, yeah, they need little f, Father, but they need capital F, Father, much, much more. And Chris, you've either going to trust, right, how you've transitioned them to love and to cherish and to count for the Heavenly Father, or you're going to let them and allow them to be dependent on the jacked up Father. And that really resonated with me. Right? And I really got this idea, right, that, man, I've got to have a faith that lives today in a way that one day I'll be glad it did. It means thinking about how you want the story of your life told to the next generation. In verse 32 it says, "And David said to Abigail, 'Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me.'" Lesson number 1, we need the body of Christ. We need the body of Christ. Right? Everybody has lapses of judgment. Right? We all do. David in this previous chapter is the one urging everyone else to stand firm. Now he's the one who caves. That's why we all need Abigails in our lives. Even if you think you're a David, we need Abigails. In verse 32, David recognized that God sent her to him. God sent you to warn me and keep me from danger. You have to be in a place where God sends you those people. Because we all have lapses in judgment. Everybody gets caught in a weak moment. Right? And when the right combination of factors kind of become clear, right? Abigail's that friend who speaks up. She speaks up in the small group. Right? She speaks up at the appropriate time when you're about to make a bad decision. Right? People tell me sometimes about the dumbest decisions that they've made. And I'm like, why on earth did you think that was a good idea? Sometimes they would say, well, I prayed about it and it just felt right. And please don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. Right? But God's given you something even more reliable sometimes, right? That's going to penetrate you in a different way, even more than maybe sometimes prayer or you getting in the Word. And that's the counsel of the body of Christ. How God answers your prayer for wisdom is a multitude of counselors. Right? That's why this assembly matters. Right? It matters that you form relationships. Right? That you form godly people that are pursuing Christ as friends. That's why it means so much to me that we. I was tried to be very intentional with starting a young adult life group. Why? Right? Why? Because, man, we'll be meeting. Right? And sometimes we're not necessarily talking about a lesson and taking them through the deepest topics of theology. No, it's not that at all. Right? It's for them to do life together, because in times as they grow up, as they get older, as they start families, as their families mature, they're going to need each other. You're going to need other people. Raise your hand if you've been married more than 20 years. You've been married more than 20 years. Look around, young people. Look around, right? Keep your hand up, please. Right? These are the people that you need to seek out for questions about marriage. Put them down. Right? These are the people that you need to seek out. right? Go have coffee with them. Hey, can I talk to you about something? Right? Listen, if you have kids older than 20 or 22, I can't help you. I can't help you. I thought it was going to get easier. Holy jeez. Or cheaper. Gummit. No, but listen, this is it. This is important. Right? Listen, this is so practical. And this is so easy, right? That we need each other. We need each other, right? Because as we come together, as we worship together, as we work, listen, nothing else is going to bind this group of people together, right? But Jesus. That's the one thing we have in common, right? We're trying our best. We're seeking Him. We're trying to do the best we can, right? None of us would be together otherwise, right? But while we need each other, we need to help each other, right? We need to build each other up, right? We need to seek godly counsel. I pray that God gives you Abigail in your life, right? Abigail. You need Abigails, right? Our society, Nabal's weak, right? That's what it said. Nabal's jacked up, right? He is, right? And he's the emotional one. Abigail is calm. She's courageous. What's our society tell us? It's the opposite, right? Our society tells us the opposite, that women are irrational, emotional. Men are the calm, the strong ones. Not in this story. Not here. Right? Both David and Nabal are the ones, man, they're consumed by their emotions. It's only Abigail who keeps her head. You know people in your life that make emotional decisions. Right? They live their life based off emotional decisions. Right? You can, 5 people popped into your head right now. Right? Find people who are going to pursue Christ with you. Listen, it is not lost on me at all. Right, that one of the most impactful things in my life, Shannon will tell you the same thing. The most impactful thing in my life that God has provided Shannon and I are Amy and Stephen Stevens to do life together with for these past 30 years. Been everything, right? Where did we meet? We met here 30 years ago. Right? Find your Abigails. Do life with them. It's life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. Leads me to our second lesson. Ladies, strap it on, y'all. It's getting ready to get real in here. I hope that's okay. Hope this is a safe place. You can be a wise woman and a blessing to your family, even with a foolish husband. Any elbows just happened? Bear with me here. Sometimes, right, you end up in a marriage and let's say it's not ideal. A lot of you have lived that, right? You've lived that. Maybe you got married too young or before you were a Christian or maybe the guy's just changed, right? Whatever, but bottom line, she's married to a guy who's not leading his life as a spiritual leader. You feel trapped. Right? That you'll never be able to make a positive impact. Learn from Abigail. Learn from Abigail. She saves the life of her husband and children despite her bad marriage. Right? Some of you are in a difficult marriage. I understand. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I know it's hard. I know it's brutal. Right? And maybe it's easy to be bitter at God because of the situation that you're in. Sometimes the best insights about God come through pain and difficulty. It's kind of like how a pearl is formed in an oyster. A beautiful pearl starts out in the heart of the oyster as an irritant. As a grain of sand, the oyster covers the irritant with pearl. And through years and years of living with that irritant, something incredible, valuable is formed. No irritant, no pearl. For some of you, that relationship's the irritant that's going to form the pearl of God's character in you. Right? Go home today, start calling your husband your pearl. God's using the marriage some way, somehow to produce beauty in you. And this is important too, just as Abigail did. 1 Corinthians 7, Paul said that a believing mom in an unbelieving family sanctifies her kids. To sanctify means to set apart. Paul's saying that our presence in the home sets apart your kids for grace. Right? It gives them a chance to see the gospel lived out and believed. God might even use you to save the life of your husband. 1 Corinthians 7, the apostle talks about the unbelieving man who are woken up because of the consistency, of the wisdom and the patience, faithful beauty of their wives. They see how you react to hardships, and it maybe opens themselves up to the gospel. Right? Seek to be an Abigail. Learn from Abigail, even if you're married to a fool. Men, I'm coming for you. Don't be a Nabal. Don't be a Nabal. Man, what a terrible story to be told about your life. Don't make your wife have to go behind your back to accomplish things. To get your kids in church. To honor God with your finances because you're living a life of foolishness. Lead in such a way that her wisdom complements yours. Men, are you the spiritual leader in your family? Are you a leader in generosity? Some of you need to wake up to your Nabal ways. Your wife's been inviting you to church, pleading with you, now you're here. Right? That's not by accident. Right? You may not have figured everything out yet, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Right, guys? Some of you, you're living in a life and in a marriage that's based maybe strictly based off intimate emotions. Right, that we're in it for the physical side of the relationship. And let me just tell you this, right? That listen, we expect, guys, I know how your mind works. I know how your body works, right? And we're like saying, we're going to go and hey, I'm just here and you're my wife and you're my husband, so we're supposed to be intimate with each other. And us guys, we're like, why isn't this working? Why is this not happening? Why are we not connecting? Right? And we're living as a jackleg dude in our home, not leading at all. Man, I promise you, if you will pursue your wife, if you will serve your wife, right? If you will do things before she asks, right? And she doesn't have to follow up and do all these things, it might get a little more intimate in your home. I figured it'd be quiet. It's real, right? Can we talk about real stuff? Right? It's all, don't be a Nabal. Don't be a Nabal. Right? Lesson number 4. You can't accomplish the promise of the Spirit in the power of the flesh. You cannot accomplish the promise of the Spirit in the power of the flesh. Right? This theme ties this story to chapter 24. In this chapter, David almost goes back to the lesson he demonstrated for us, right, in the previous one. Life takes an unexpected turn. We have a choice. We take matters into our own hands. That's what we like to do. Or we can do things God's way and wait on Him to fulfill His promise. Think about this. When somebody does something rude to you in traffic, they're going 20 miles an hour down Hickory Grove Road. Right? And not that I would ever do this, but you ride their bumper. Right? And then it's like they act somehow like it's your fault. Right? And they're looking at you and they're questioning you. Right? And they maybe even drive by you or they give you number one, right? Or whatever that looks like, right? You don't necessarily go by them, roll down your window and say, "Bless you, friend." No. Our instinct, our sin nature is to respond unkindness with unkindness. That's how we're made. That's our instinct. Right? Our momentary traffic episodes. I told y'all, I have been on somebody's bumper down Hickory Grove Road and they turn into this church and I keep going. That's the truth. That's true. I'm up here a sinner. We think to restore righteousness, we need to take matters in our own hands. And listen to me, church. Listen to me. There is none righteous. No, not one. Not me. Your boss is a jerk. You respond with sloppy work or try to undermine him. Your spouse is rude and insensitive. You're cold and you're petty toward them. A family member lets you down, makes you mad, you blow up and you scream at them, right? All of these responses are in turn to try to fix a situation by the power of our flesh. Right? We think that by repaying unkindness with unkindness, we can fix them. The problem is, you notice that rarely works? James 1:20 says, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires, therefore get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. The anger of men cannot produce righteousness. Right? The anger of man won't build God's kingdom. Feels like when you see a lack of righteousness in your spouse or your kids or your boss or your friends, that if you get angry and punish them for what they did, that'll make them into righteousness. But James clearly says the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Something else he does, he says, accept the word planted in you, which can save you. Right? So get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent. Respond instead with meekness, with humility, with forgiveness, with grace. That's how God's righteousness is produced in the world. That's how Jesus changed us, right? Jesus didn't change us by paying us back for our sin. He changed us by showing us grace. God's law told me what I was supposed to do. His threats of judgment may have scared me right into some outward conformity, but only His grace gave me the desire to obey Him and to pursue Him. Only grace changed me. You'll never accomplish the work of the Spirit by the power of the flesh. Romans 12:21, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's how Jesus changed us. And finally, is David the king that we're looking for? Is David really the king that we're looking for? Right? In some ways, I wish the story ended with David relenting of his desire to take vengeance on Nabal. Right? But the author tucks in a subtle little detail, right? And we'll finish up here soon, right? That portends much worse things to come. In verse 40, he says, his servants went to Carmel and said to Abigail, David has sent us to you to take you to become his wife. Well, that escalated real quickly. Dang, Dave. He's more like us than we thought, huh? She bowed down with her face to the ground and said, I'm your servant and I'm ready to serve you and wash the feet of my Lord's servants. Abigail quickly got on a donkey and, attended by her 5 female servants, went with David's messengers and became his wife. At first that sounds great. You go, boy. She's an amazing woman. She's a good catch. This begins for David the multiplication of wives. See the next verse. In verse 33, David had also married Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they both were his wives. That's wives 2 and 3. Unfortunately, David begins to follow the custom of the day. He began to become just like all the other kings, right? In Deuteronomy 17, God had explicitly warned future Israelite kings not to do this. Right? And this chapter is one of the first indications that David may not be the promised king that we're looking for. See, up to this point, he seemed like he was. David was the humble shepherd boy. He trusted God. He lived with undaunted courage. Up until now, he has carried himself humbly, with grace. He trusted God in impossible circumstances. But here we see right now, first, a lapse in faith. David succumbed to a vengeful spirit. And then second, he begins to leverage his kingly privilege. Right? His multiply wives is a direct disobedience to the command of God. Hey, listen, we're just a few chapters into David's story, and already our hearts are beginning to yearn for a king that's more righteous than David. The point is that our salvation will never come from a man. No matter how strong or righteous they appear. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. There's none righteous, no, not one. Even David is going to fail us. Your dad will fail you. Your spouse will fail you. Your children will fail you. Your pastor will fail you. In fact, in this story, Abigail's the closest picture of Jesus that we have. Think about it. She's wise, discerning sage who rides in on a donkey, humbles herself, takes all the blame for what's happened on herself from her husband, right? Even though she's innocent, she offers a meal of peace, which happens to be, by the way, a meal of lamb. By her bravery and sacrifice, she purchases salvation for many. She saved her husband. She saved all of his men. David's not the best picture of Jesus in this story. She is. Right? We're starting to see that David is not the hoped-for king that we thought he was. Those things have come through a later king, a descendant of David, who laid down his life for all of us treasonous Nabals. If you're looking for us in this story, we are Nabal, strutting around like kings, ungrateful to the God, right, of kindness, despising and rebuffing his goodness. Jesus, the true king, right, refused to take vengeance on all of us, dying for us instead. The true king, the king that we're all searching for, is not David. It'll be the son of David. But just not the son of David. He will also be the Son of God. And unlike David, he'll never falter or fail or need to be reminded to trust God. He'll be the hope, but not just for Israel, for all mankind. And whether you know it or not, he's the king that you are searching for too. We can find plenty of examples of us in this story. Right? For some of you, there's a relational story in here, and you need to take some inventory of your life, of your parenting, of your marriage, of your walk with Christ. Right? You need to take inventory, right, of the legacy that you're leaving your children. Because I'm here to tell you, as we enter into this next season of life, the conversations that just in the past few weeks at my house that I've gotten to have with my adult son. With our adult daughter. We got more wrong than we got right. But you need to take an inventory. Right? And listen, it only comes, Daddy, listen to me. It only comes as you pursue Jesus. It's the only way. Right? Mama, as you pursue Christ, then He'll start to reveal Himself. And He'll take away all those selfish desires and all those selfish way of living. Guys, dads, husbands, let me tell you, right? You need to humble yourselves to your family. You need to serve your family. You need to serve your children. You need to serve your wife. It's the only way. It's the only way. You're not the king of the castle. God's the king. And you're just a servant in the house that He's given you to watch over. Right? And you think that, man, you're just due to have all these little things. And understand this, right? In the kingdom, we don't deserve any of it. None. Zilch. None. It's by the free atonement of His grace and His love and His mercy that we got what we got. I ask you to stand.